Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Design Diablo. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the bottom bar, its shape, and its texture. And it's an evolution. What we end up with in this video is not the final product, but is moving in, I think, the right direction. So it's a good starting point for us. And we're looking at not only its shape, but also what rock textures we're looking at using in the background there. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is where we left off. Right now we're just fiddling with this sort of shiny effect that's part of the Diablo 3 logo. It's neat. We're going to use it somewhere. We're not quite sure yet where yet, but this is the type of thing that you see a lot in Diablo 3, this glow, sort of a futuristic almost glowy look. And it's not something we want to overdo because we are not trying to emulate the aesthetic of Diablo 3. We really want to return Diablo to its roots, but it is really cool, so we want to see if we can use it somewhere. And what we're trying now is using it potentially as some sort of divider, either between the skill icon area, or maybe right now coming out from underneath the red health globe as a way to separate the gargoyle from the bottom of the bar. But not really feeling that, so it's just an exploration of how we can use it. It definitely looks nice right there on that bottom bar, just as an accent or something, and maybe it could have some practical use while playing. Maybe it's like experience bars. I don't know. I could see that sort of effect being in use during the game and changing as your character does one thing or another. So we're looking at this area beneath the gargoyles, trying to figure out how are we going to separate the gargoyle from the bar itself. Not really a big fan of how it's coming out from that little bit of a line there. Someone on the stream suggested that it doesn't really look right, them coming out of that tiny little separator. So I totally 100% agree with that. So we're looking for an answer to that, but we're also looking at and thinking about what the texture of the background's going to be. That's Ace Ventura already then. And so we're also looking at the textures and what's making the mana globe have that bluish layered look. I think we're really just getting a sense for what we want to do next. So sometimes it's helpful to show the game background. It's just a random screenshot from Diablo, but it kind of reminds us that it won't, but that in a fictional universe, this would be used in game. So looking also to what might provide some sort of separation between the bar and the skill icon area, and really liking this cracked sort of texture, and really hating the fact that the new version of Photoshop has these rich tooltips, so we are turning those off as soon as possible. Okay, back to the design. So I think what we're going to do here is cut along that edge to see if we can have that crack provide act as the border or edge of the bar on that side. So in order to do that, we just use the marquee tool to select along the edge, and so now it's our job to figure out how to make it fit in and to adjust the surrounding elements. So we're moving a lot of things out of the way here while we work on making that the background, looking to see what could provide the sort of like a boundary or a border or some kind of highlight along the edge, and maybe one of those highlights we were using could be used for that. Hiding the skill icon for now. I think they do go away for a little while. We'll see them again in a video in the future, but for now we're just looking to define what the bar itself is going to look like, what its textures will be. Again, thinking about that effect, because we do really like it. It's just a matter of figuring out where and how to use it effectively. It does, I think, take over in a cool way, but we want to be careful about not drawing the eye in too much to something like that, where the player's eye should really be focused on the mana and health globes themselves. We're just thinking about how this bar is going to, how it's going to function. Giving it a bluish glow would carry over that theme of, red on one side, blue on the other, so that might be cool. But the main focus right now is hiding some of these other elements and trying to figure out what the overall texture and shape of the bottom bar is going to be. And so zooming in, I think we're just gonna hide this icon for now, or just look at it as it stands in that space. It's not bad, just sort of floating there. I don't know that would make sense in the final product, but it is like a decent area for an icon like that to live. But probably it should be a part of the bar in some way. So how that happens, we're not sure yet, but that's sort of a neat, I think, way to treat this bottom bar, is to not have it go all the way across maybe, but to have it, make it look like a natural stone sort of texture. Give it some more shape and some more feeling of like imperfection. And maybe on the left hand side, the bar is not the same exact shape. And again, just thinking about this effect, maybe it could be a border, maybe it goes behind, maybe it goes in front, I don't know. I don't really think we come to any consensus about where this should be in this video, but you're just going to see it's moving around, see me moving it around a bit, see if anything does make sense. Yeah, so it's pretty neat. If you take away the red, I think the red was bothering me because it really shouldn't be red on this side. It should be blue, or I don't know, white, or some kind of neutral tone. So we tried to take away the red part of it to see if that would work, but again, not really. But it's a good idea. So now that we have that shape, that sort of V, well, I don't know, that angled end piece on the bar, the next question is, how does it fit in with the rest of the bar? And this is pretty tedious work. Like this is probably up there with the difficulty, or maybe even harder, of getting the gargoyles to the demon and angel to fit in. Because I don't know, background textures are so important because they're there all the time. So even though the player's not looking at it and paying very close attention to it all the time, somewhere in the back of our mind, we know if that background is put together in a lazy way. Maybe there's repeated textures on there. You see that all the time in games, and it drives me crazy because just a little bit of extra work by the developer, the designer, would have preserved the fantasy of this being a different world, and not something where you'd see an exact same texture in two different places. So we're going to try not to fall into that trap. It's a little bit of a lazy thing to fall into that trap, and we don't want to do that. It's also an easy thing to get, when developers, I think, probably are rushed for time, they're not sweating the details like that. They're trying to get the game shipped. I totally understand that, but we have the luxury of zero timeline, so we want to take our time and make this excellent. So on the left-hand side, thinking maybe, okay, this crack could provide the shape of the bar on the left-hand side. It's not bad. It's definitely, it's different than the right-hand side, so you don't have that problem of too much symmetry. It's a different texture, so you don't see repeated textures, but it's vaguely the same shape, which I think is really cool, because it gives a sort of sense of symmetry without it being overly or unnatural in how it's symmetrical. So potentially this could work. Yeah, neat. Looking at this again, I feel like that's a pretty strong design decision. Sometimes I like to just move the bar to the bottom of the screen by itself. I think on the video probably doesn't appear to be at the bottom. Well, maybe it does, but I like to move it to the bottom of the screen and just look at it and say, if I were playing a game in this space, would this interface, you know, would this be an excellent looking, feeling interface? And that's fun to do because you can just hide everything in Photoshop and kind of put it at the bottom so everything else is black, and just sort of pretend that you're in the fantasy of playing a game with this as the interface. So good, yeah. I really wanted to hide everything else and just say like, okay, what is it? Well, you know, what would this look like? Again, what would this look like if this were the game? And I feel pretty strongly about it that we're on the right track. We're not there by no means, but we're on the right track, and that's good because it gives me the motivation to keep working on it. We still have the problem where the gargoyle and the angel don't really look right coming out of the rock like that. Just that little texture there. So we have to do something about that for sure. And there's a few other things that kind of don't make sense. The border on the left-hand side, the way the bar sort of fades in or fades out doesn't really work for me. Somehow it's better on the right-hand side. Not really sure how. I think we spend a lot of the next video trying to figure that out with limited success. But we do. It does give me the feeling that, you know, we should continue with this project, and it's worthwhile and coming along. So obviously, a big question is where we put the skill icons for the left and right mouse buttons. Those are now gone, but we take a look at that, and so we're trying now to address that issue with the rock texture and like what is it that's making this look unnatural or not so great. I think it just doesn't make sense visually for such a prominent, I don't know, statuesque like object to be coming from what appears to be a very thin plane, and the same for her on the right hand side. So we will get to the point of addressing that fully, but probably not in this video. The other issue with this is that the middle part of the texture doesn't really fit in with the left and right side, so we're gonna have to fix that as well. It's not horrible, but it just still doesn't look right. It looks like two different images, which it most certainly is. Okay, so now we're sort of getting towards the end of this design session, and we're looking at the texture on the right hand side to see if we can copy it using the stamp tool. Not a tool I've used for many years, but still seems to operate in a way that, the same way that I remember it. You take a piece of an image from elsewhere and then place it, you sort of take a sample and then you stamp it where you want to see it. I'm having some trouble figuring out how this all works again, but it does. So that seems like a good area. And so just to try and continue that texture further into the middle of the bar, I'm using the stamp tool to do that. And potentially we could make this middle part fit in better by using levels and you know, hues, saturation, filters to get it to match what the rock texture looks like on either side. So I'm playing with that, but not really coming to any I don't feel strongly about it yet. Could also go the other way, and sort of this would make it appear as though that middle bar sort of floating above the background. I'm not sure that makes sense either, and it's a little bit lazy because the only reason it looks that way is because we don't have any more image to work with under there. It just sort of fades to black. But you know, I think at this point we only have a few more minutes left in the stream, and I'm just messing around. And yeah, I just lazily grab the transform tool and pull it up. And yeah, sometimes you can get away with that because it's just it's not like a person's face where you would know that it was stretched. I think I'm just doing this to see whether the color and basic texture can appear as though it's part of either side. Okay, so we're all done. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.